This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Hi, everyone. Before this episode starts, I just wanted to say that a big part of the Scare You to Sleep community has recently passed. William Holzhauser Kurtz was a very active part of the Scare You to Sleep Facebook group and a supporter of mine and the show from almost the beginning. His husband informed me of his passing this last week. And I just couldn't let this next episode go by without mentioning how much his presence will be missed. William, or Billy, as he was also known, was one of my biggest cheerleaders. Someone I never actually got to meet, but who never made himself a stranger, especially when it came to making me and my work feel so loved and appreciated. You leave behind so much positivity and love, William. Rest well. Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to read you true stories sent in by your fellow listeners. I will be recording my next Q&A episode Tuesday, February 24th, so please submit any questions, comments, or confessions for me that you have before then. There's a link in the show notes to an anonymous question form called NGL. And yes, it is totally anonymous, I promise. So if you have anything you'd like to ask or say, click on that link and post away. Our first story this evening is a very sweet one from Maria. Hey Shelby, my name is Maria, and I've been listening to your podcast for years. I love your voice, thank you, and the way you bring other people's stories to life. What I'm about to share is entirely true. I am, by nature, a rational person. I trust logic, evidence, and explanation. Still, I try to remain open-minded, aware that reality contains layers we rarely perceive and often dismiss. This story takes place in a small town in Eastern Europe. I was in my 20s when my grandmother passed away. I loved her deeply. She was gentle, optimistic, and possessed a kindness that seemed almost inexhaustible. Losing her felt like losing something irreplaceable. As soon as we received the news, my family and I drove 6 hours to her hometown for the funeral. In our culture, the deceased is kept at home overnight, laid in an open coffin, so loved ones can gather and say their goodbyes before the burial. When we arrived, the house was already crowded, relatives talking softly, catching up in low voices, the strange normalcy of life continuing around death. My grandmother lay in the middle of the living room, dressed in her favorite pink button-up shirt. She looked peaceful, almost as though she were simply resting. I couldn't bring myself to stay in the room for long. The weight of it all pressed down on me, so I lingered in the kitchen instead, trying to steady myself. Then my aunt arrived with her dog, Misha. Misha was a clever, curious, mid-sized, black mixed-breed dog who had known my grandmother well. From the moment he entered the house, he seemed unsettled, not frightened, but irritated, restless, as if something was off and he couldn't quite understand why. Without warning, Misha trotted down the hallway and into my grandmother's bedroom. And he began to bark. Not aggressively, not in fear. It was persistent, insistent, like someone knocking on a door that wasn't opening. My father and I followed him. No one else was in the room. Misha stood beside the bed, barking at the empty mattress, his tail stiff, his head tilted slightly as though addressing someone who wasn't visible to us. He paced, stopped, barked again, then circled the bed once more, clearly focused on a presence we could not perceive. My father and I exchanged a glance. Where I come from, we believe that after death, a person's soul remains close to the living for a short time. Not out of fear or unrest, but out of love. Misha eventually stopped barking. He gave one last soft whine, then laid down beside the bed, resting his head on the floor, as if satisfied, as if he had accomplished something important. The rest of the night passed quietly, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. I don't know what Misha sensed in that room. I don't know what, if anything, was there. But I choose to believe he wasn't barking at emptiness. I believe he was greeting a friend. Thank you for that one, Maria. That was very touching. It's pretty close to the time where it's going to be the 2-year anniversary of when I lost my grandma. And it really touched my heart. I've been thinking about her a lot lately, and so that story really got to me in such a good way. So thank you for sharing that. It was beautiful. And not to switch gears too quickly, but this next one is from Maya, and it is a very strange one. Just wanted to drop a hello and tell you a creepy thing that happened to me once. There have been many, but this one still haunts me to this day. I had recently moved in with my husband, then boyfriend, and had just gone to bed one night alone as my boyfriend was at poker. I remember falling asleep after being so tired as I couldn't keep my eyes open. All of a sudden, I remember hearing children crying and a chainsaw going, and I'm looking around not understanding where it is coming from, as I live in a neighborhood surrounded by people in every angle. I became so terrified because the sounds were getting closer and closer, and I could not move a single muscle in my body. I had no idea what was going on, and I tried to scream, but I couldn't get anyone's attention. Not only was I alone, but I was unable to move, and I was sure I was going to be killed by whoever was reeling this chainsaw. Desperate, I tried and tried to move, and still nothing happened. I was finally awakened by my boyfriend freaking out about the crazy lunatic in our neighborhood chasing some kids with a chainsaw. There were 3 of them, and 2 got away unscathed. One, however, got his leg sliced by this lunatic, but was scared away by someone yelling and screaming. Was it me? Did I save this kid's life? I'll never know. That lunatic was never caught. It's been 15 years since that happened, and every night before bed, I think of that person with a chainsaw in my neighborhood. That's so strange, Maya. There's this book, and it was also made into a movie. I don't think I saw the movie, but I did read the book, called John Dies at the End, and I think it's become a little controversial in recent years. I think because of the author. I don't know for sure, though, so I'm not like... I'm just saying I read it at one time when it very first came out. If anyone remembers the days when Cracked.com was like popular, it was one of their authors, and so I used to read like everything they wrote. Anyway, in John Dies at the End, there's a part where they talk about like dreams. I mean, it talks about dreams quite a bit in that novel, but there's like a whole, it's been a long time since I've read it, but there's a whole thing about how when a phone is ringing in your dream, and it happens every time thunder is happening outside, or vice versa. The phone is ringing and in your dream you hear thunder. And it was this whole like, well, that's why it's explainable, because the thunder was happening. So I heard it. So in my dream, it became a phone ringing or whatever. And then one of the characters says like, okay, but how did your brain know when the thunder was going to happen to make the phone ring at the same time in your dream? You know what I mean? So it's just interesting how dreams and reality line up sometimes. Again, it's one of those things that I don't claim to know anything about. I don't claim to have any answers on. It's just very fascinating. And it's really creepy. I can see why it haunts you. It's so strange. I mean, I'm glad all those kids got away, but I didn't know there was a real possibility of a chainsaw-wielding lunatic. I see them at haunted houses all the time and in movies, but wow. Well, I am so glad everyone was okay. Too bad they didn't catch the guy, and I don't know. I have no answers for you, but thank you so much for sharing, because that is really strange and fascinating. Our next submission is from Atticus. Hey, hi, and howdy. Name's Atticus. Surprisingly not from To Kill a Mockingbird or from any mythology, just from a mom well-versed in pop culture. Anyways, longtime listener to the pod, recently subbed to the Patreon too. Thank you. As someone who's grown up in haunted houses and lived with paranormal experiences throughout my entire life, I never thought that the paranormal ever was something taboo. Luckily, I grew up with a mom that was just as invested in the paranormal as I am now, and a grandfather whose grand idea of a boys' night was vanilla malts, popcorn, and Scary Movie 3 for a 5-year-old. Anyways, thanks for all that you guys do and providing a valuable space for the people who don't have it in their home. Feel free to exclude this portion or don't. Chill with whatever, and on with the story. Future Atticus popping in to say, it's a long ride and a lot longer than anticipated. It's not that long. Don't worry, Atticus. It's really not that long. The pacing will be quite awkward. Think of it as a walk through memories. I'll be taking you on a written-down museum tour of my haunted house, where as we walk through and enough information about the space has been given, I'll begin the stories for the most accurate depictions. Names have been changed for privacy. Anyways, around 2010, me and my family were living in the suburbs of Southern California. Apologies for the future description of the house. I have aphantasia and bad memory issues. That's okay. Anyways, looking upon the house, there's a side entrance to the backyard. It was around a 25-foot walk. In this area, there was never a good vibe here. Every singular time I came back here, it felt like my body had been almost under the pressure of water, and yet I would be fully dry and in the normal air. After talking to my family about it, my uncle, we'll call A, told me he had seen multiple dark shadow figures back in the area, looking at him through the windows that were part of the garage. Continuing forward and taking a right to see a door to the kitchen, and straight ahead, connected to the backyard, was our pool and jacuzzi. When me and my brother had gone swimming one time, we were playing with different new diving toys that our parents had gotten us, and when diving, I had expected to return to the surface for more air, when I felt a sense of fight or flight, and within a second of the feeling, I felt something grab my ankle. I've always been a strong swimmer, but this thing dragged me about a good 3 feet under the water. In the same pool a few years earlier, the same brother dropped one of his toy trucks in the pool from the jacuzzi. Being the bigger brother, I was like 5, I tried to grab his toy, and in the process felt myself be pulled into the water. Not knowing how to swim, I almost drowned. But luckily, one of my uncles managed to get me within the time before I passed. Right behind you would be the doghouse/pen, big digging types of dogs. You would be standing in the middle of a 25 by 75 foot lawn. Continuing straight, you'll pass under a kitchen windowsill extension, and around the corner, about 10 feet farther back, is the backyard porch and an area to park a car. There's also a door to the living room here on the right-hand side. From the information I've gathered from everyone's memories of where we found the jar, I wasn't there when it was found. We found a glass jar buried in the yard. My grandfather was an avid gardener, so the soil was usually fairly freshly touched, making it fairly hard to notice anything askew. But in this jar, there were 7 distinct layers of different soil types, mixed with different types of herbs, rusted metal pieces, and I believe I saw chicken-type bones. They were fairly small. I'm not sure if they were chicken bones, though, given the previous animals found around the house. The jar was also sealed with a black twine and a red wax, with some different herbs in the wax. Anyways, for the interior of the house, you could enter from the garage, which was immediately next to the backyard entrance. The garage could hold 2 sedans with a decent amount of space left, and that led straight to my grandmother's room, with my uncle's room immediately to the left of the garage entrance. Immediately right and about 35 feet back of the garage is the main entrance. Here we would walk outside to see the bodies of small cats, dogs, birds, and other wildlife murdered with wooden stakes and wrapped in different color twine/yarn, moving forward to the living room. If you were to continue around 25 feet forward, you'll see the kitchen immediately in front of you. To your left is a hallway. At the end of the hallway was a recession into the wall where we had a wardrobe. My mother's room is to the left and the bathroom to the right. Around 2 feet before the dresser was my grandmother's room. One time while I was in this room and I had walked to use the master bathroom, I had walked in to watch the Jesus statue attached to a cross break off its cross. It was only attached by 2 nails going through his hands, but it broke only on the 2 nails, with the cross and Jesus intact, but on the floor. Immediately outside the room is once again the dresser. Right above the dresser, we had a mirror that was circular and shaped like the sun. Being a child, I don't know exactly how high up it was, nor how high up the hallways were, but one time I had stepped out of my mother's room and into the backyard patio, through the backyard exit/entrance to ask for my mother's phone to watch YouTube horror compilations. When I returned through the doors with my mother's phone and excitement for the ghosts, I began to walk into the hallway when I realized that there's a black figure in the mirror slouching, like it's a green giant in a low-ceiling civilian household. Feeling him stare at my soul and borderline pissing myself, I turn around and continue to turn on all the lights. I laid in the living room on the couch and continued my ghost videos there, hoping that the shadow figure would eventually go away. Once while I was walking into the kitchen, I had a mug thrown at me from the cupboard. The best way I could describe this was, imagine someone grabbing the mug from the closed cupboard and using the mug to apply pressure to the cabinet door in order to open it. Anyway, it landed on the counter across from the cupboard and shattered, of course. I had to clean it up, and as a child, I got blamed for being clumsy. Sure, like I could reach that. Anyways, we kept angel statues around the dining room, and occasionally at night, when I was the only one up, I would hear the statues being rotated around in place. My brother also reported to me that he had also experienced the mug being thrown at him, as well as hearing disembodied voices that sounded like him or our mother. On multiple occasions, people in the house said they saw figures standing in the yard in early mornings and later nights through the windowsill. Eventually, my grandmother contacted someone and they did something to the jar, and pretty much everything in the house came to an abrupt end. I have tons more experiences. I've always willingly invited the world of the unknown to interact with me so as to study it, but I would love any intake as to what exactly was going on at the home. Thank you, Atticus. Yeah, what they found was definitely some sort of spell jar. Whether you believe in witchcraft or not, or any of the different practices that are associated with witchcraft, I would say that's at least what it was intended to be, with the wax and the herbs and the metal and the bones and the twine. I think, again, even if you don't believe in that sort of thing, that seems to be what its intention was. I can't speak for all the murdered animals. I don't know if you have anyone in the neighborhood or your family that was maybe responsible for that. Not to put anything on your family. I apologize. It's just, I feel like we skirted over that pretty quick. I couldn't give you any answers other than I know there are probably some practitioners of different schools of witchcraft that listen that probably could give you a better idea. So if you have any ideas, feel free to comment on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you listen to this podcast and maybe give Atticus some answers. But I'm glad that it got taken care of, because it seems like that was probably the singular factor in a lot of it. I do wonder, and it's not just you, Atticus. I've had a few people talk about shadow figures. I mean, that's a pretty common thing to hear about in paranormal stories. I've never seen one, and I feel like I would absolutely lose my goddamn mind. I don't know how some of you are like, yeah, and I saw this giant shadow figure anyways. Like, went back to my ghost YouTube. How? Because if I saw a shadow figure standing in my hallway or in my kitchen or something, I think I'd need to like take a little time off away from the situation, an extended time away from the area and the situation, if you get my drift. Because so many of you are like, yeah, I saw a shadow figure. Like, what do you mean you just saw a shadow figure? Some of you do react the way I think I would have, but some of you are like, anyway, on to other stuff. Okay, and our next several come from Nikki. This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Shelby, every morning I lay in bed and listen to your podcast. I always think, oh, I'll remember to send my stories tomorrow for sure. 2 years later, I finally pulled my shit together and got it done. Please keep up the good work and don't be bashful about reading the nice things people say about you. Thank you, Nikki, and I get it. I'm also, that sounds like a familiar thing to my life, so, but here you are. So introduction, Nikki has this broken up into nice little sections. Thank you, Nikki. Introduction, the ghost first policy. As a devoted fan of all things spooky, I've heard countless true ghost stories from friends, family, and this podcast. One common thread in every tale, the storyteller feels the need to methodically eliminate every logical explanation before even considering the possibility of a ghost. It's like there's an unspoken rule. Only after exhausting all rational options can we entertain the supernatural. That's why I've implemented my ghost first policy. Instead of overanalyzing every eerie occurrence, I go straight to, yep, that was a ghost. If a more logical explanation comes along later, great, I'll roll with it. But this approach makes life more fun, less stressful, and way more magical. Plus, people feel more comfortable sharing their ghost encounters with me, knowing I'll believe them without hesitation. There are plenty of skeptics out there, and I respect them. But I choose to be the person who embraces the mystery, celebrates the strange, and wholeheartedly believes in the spooky stories that make life a little more exciting. I'm going to interrupt real quick before we get to our next part, Nikki, because I feel the same way. By the way, the more you entertain ghost stories and believe in them for people, the more they'll tell you their ghost stories, and it's very, very fun. This next section is called Soapy Smith, Skagway, Alaska. After college, I found myself in Alaska performing as a can-can dancer in a musical about the 1898 gold rush. The old theater where we performed had a long history, and with it came countless ghost stories passed down from dancer to dancer. Some were harmless, like the prankster spirit in the women's bathroom, who delighted in locking one of the stalls overnight. More than once, my fellow dancers and I had to crawl under the door in the morning just to get it to open. But other stories carried a darker edge, and one night I experienced something I'll never forget. The theater's layout was simple. The auditorium was on the main level, and there was a mezzanine overlooking the stage and 2 dressing rooms on the second floor, one small room behind the stage and the main dressing room behind the audience. The crew was very strict about turning off the lights in the dressing room when not in use, as they interfered with the stage lighting design. We all followed this rule religiously. Before each performance, we'd get ready in the main dressing room, then cross the mezzanine to the window room, where we'd lean out and call out to passers-by, flirting, catcalling, and enticing them to see our show. The musical centered around Soapy Smith, a real-life con man from the Gold Rush era, infamous for his large-brimmed hat and his playful cons. One evening, just as I was heading to the window room for my shift, I realized I had forgotten my lipstick in the dressing room. One cannot entice without red lipstick, after all. With a sigh, I turned back. As I neared the doorway, I hesitated. The lights were on. I was sure I had turned them off. Maybe another dancer was inside. But then I saw something that made my stomach tighten. A figure slipping into the room. The hallway was dim, but the dressing room was brightly lit. Yet somehow, the figure remained nothing but a shadow, dark and featureless as it moved against the light. I stood frozen for a moment before my rational mind took over. Heart pounding, I stepped through the open door. The room was empty. Completely still, no sound, no movement. There was nowhere anyone could have gone. I swallowed hard, grabbed my lipstick, and switched off the light before making my way back to the balcony. But as soon as I stepped onto the balcony, I came to an abrupt stop. Standing in the dim light before me was the shadow of a tall, thin man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. He was utterly still, watching me. The breath caught in my throat. Then, without a word, he turned, and as he moved, his form flickered, dissolving into the darkness like smoke in the wind. I never forgot my lipstick again. Ah! See these dark shadow figures. Ah, that's a good one. Thank you, Nikki. There's more from Nikki. Don't you worry. That was so scary, though. I'm just commenting on each one. Sorry for my interruptions, everyone. Next one, Nikki is called We Have a Ghost, Salt Lake City, Utah. My husband, Boo, and I have lived in our house for over a decade. From the very first year, we knew we weren't alone. Not in a scary, haunted way, more like we were sharing the space with others. There was never an ominous presence, no feelings of anger or unrest, just small, unmistakable signs that let us know someone was there. When we first moved in, we adopted 2 mutts who quickly became part of our family. For the first year, at least once a week, we would wake up to one of them making distressed noises. Always at 3 a.m., like clockwork, our little pit bull would be standing rigid, hackles raised, barking furiously at the same corner of the ceiling in our bedroom. Over time, the barking turned to low, uneasy growls, and then, eventually, stopped altogether. Years after a string of neighborhood break-ins, we decided to install motion-activated cameras in our front and backyards. The backyard camera mostly captured harmless clips of our dogs rolling in the grass while we were at work. Every night, Boo would scroll through the videos and delete them. One night, as we lay in bed, each of us lost in our own scrolling, Boo gently elbowed me and said, "Hey, we have a ghost." I laughed. "I know, the dogs have been telling us for years." He handed me his phone. "Yeah, but we have a ghost." Curious, I took the phone and saw the paused video from the backyard camera. The shot covered our carport, part of the yard, the fence, and the deck. The workshop in the carport has been there since the house was built in 1959. There was nothing in the frame that could have moved with the wind to trigger the motion sensor. I scrolled to the beginning of the clip and pressed play. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Then, there she was. A white mist distinctly shaped like a little girl. You could clearly make out the outline of her head, torso, and what looked like a frilly dress. As I traced her figure downward, her legs faded into nothingness. There were no feet. She stood still for a moment, facing the camera. Her expression was unreadable, but her posture was upright, almost confident. Then, without hesitation, she turned and walked away. With each step, she faded, dissolving into thin air. The video ended after a few seconds, leaving behind only stillness. I watched it 2 more times, silently. I then turned to Boo and said simply, "Yep, we have a ghost." When I told my friends about it later, their first question was, "Did you save it?" And that's the strange part. Neither of us even thought to. It was like there was some kind of mental block, a quiet nudge keeping us from preserving the proof. By the time I texted Boo to save it, the video had already auto-deleted. Over the years, we've continued making our backyard more inviting. A fire pit, cozy furniture, yard games. One of our favorite additions was a ring toss game, where a string with a metal ring hangs from the ceiling of the carport, swinging towards a hook on a lateral beam. Every time we passed by, we'd take a moment to see who could land the ring first. One late night, Boo was organizing tools in the workshop, tucked away in the carport. After about 15 minutes, he decided to head inside for a drink. But as he stepped out of the shop, he stopped abruptly. The ring on the string was swinging. Not swaying randomly in the breeze, but moving with purpose, a direct, deliberate arc toward the hook. There was no way the wind could have knocked it off like that. Boo simply watched for a moment before shrugging to himself. It seemed our little backyard ghost girl just wanted to play. And that is it for our episode this evening. Thank you to all of you who submitted your stories. I know sometimes sending in true stories feels a little vulnerable, so I heartily appreciate your submissions. So if you'd like to submit your own true stories, please send them to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. Please put true story in the subject line so I know where to categorize it in my email inbox. And I wanted to tell you, I wrote a story for Mayfair Watchers Society. I know a lot of you are also fans of that show. And it's called Jurgen Kurtwood's Haunted Mill Tour. So please go check that out. It's my first story I've ever written for Mayfair Watchers Society. I was very nervous because they have quite the bundle of lore. And I was just nervous about pitching my story because, I don't know, it's just nerve-wracking writing for other people. And it came together so beautifully. It's got so many voice actors that you would recognize. Rissa Montañez she's on Creepy a lot. Jesse Hall, John Grills, Creepy himself, plays a curmudgeonly man, which I told him he did great, and he said he was born for the role. So, and just so many voice actors. Oh, Tal Minier. I can't even think of everyone who's on there. I did kind of a big cast. I wrote kind of it's a ghost tour, so you got to have your tour goers, right? And it's just so fantastically acted. Gerald Hill, who plays the titular Jurgen Kurtwood, I've not gotten to work with him before, and he was so excellent, like exactly what I pictured for the role. And this is a show, it's not my show. I wrote the story. I don't have anything to do with casting or anything. So the rest of it was all a surprise to me other than getting my script approved. And so this was so exciting for me, hearing it come to life like this. So please go check it out. If you like my stories that I write for this show, it is not unlike the stories I write for this show. That was one reason I was worried it wouldn't get accepted. But except it's acted with a full cast of incredible actors. So yeah, it's Mayfair Watchers Society. The episode is called Jurgen Kurtwood's Haunted Mill Tour. If you're listening to this as this comes out, it's the most recent episode. And so yeah, check it out. I'm very, very proud of it. Very excited. I apologize that this episode was a little shorter this week. I'm actually headed out of town for my cousin's baby shower. So I had a little bit of shorter week. I also had another day where my power was cut off. I know there was one of you who actually commented on Spotify, your apartment sucks. Look, unless you're all willing to pitch in to buy me my very own haunted mansion to move into, I just have to these are just things I have to deal with. I'm sorry. But anyway, if you'd like to follow the show on social media, you can follow it at scareyoutosleep on all the socials. I don't update most of them these days other than Instagram and Facebook. The Facebook group is very active, so go join the Facebook group. There's a lot of great people over there. And let's see. Oh, you can follow me personally at Shelby B. Novak. And if you'd like to see more of me in a more casual manner, you can find me on the Bloody Disgusting podcast every single week on YouTube. If you just go follow the Bloody Disgusting official account with me and Zena. And this last week, we did another hot sauce episode with our buddy Tony Wash, the director of programming and original content for Screambox. So another fun hot sauce episode. Zena also had a fucking crazy question for us to open the episode, and I'd love to know all your input. Oh, speaking of questions, remember to send in your anonymous questions to the link in the show notes. I've been getting some good ones and some personal ones that I'm definitely, I'm going to answer. I'm a healed person. Let's answer some questions, some personal questions. So feel free to send in any questions. Again, if there's something that I don't feel comfortable with, I just won't answer it. And there's no harm, no foul. This is like the nosy person's dream. It's anonymous. You can ask me whatever you'd like. Again, there are a couple I may not answer, just if it's, a little crazy, but feel free to ask away. Or again, questions, comments, or confessions. Confess to a crime. Confess to a crime. I turned into Sean Connery there for a second. Confess to a crime. Confess to, confess to a comment you have about this show, about me, about Clara, about any of my other shows I'm on, about my recent Mayfair Watchers Society episode, if you listen to it. I'd love some, give me some feedback. I'd love it. How do you feel about the most recent episode that I wrote, Suffering Song? Do you like that kind of found footage type episode? Because I have a lot of fun writing that type of episode. And what else? I'm also on the Lady Killers. Go check out the Lady Killers podcast. That's where we discuss a movie about, usually it's a female villain of some sort in every episode. We've just did The Woman in Black. We've recently done Interview with a Vampire and The Ugly Stepsister. Let's see, what else? Crimson Peak. We did something else recently. Maybe it just hasn't come out yet, and that's why I'm not thinking of it. But it's been so much fun to be on that show. I love that cast of ladies. It's been such a joy to be a revolving co-host on that show. So go check out the Lady Killers. It's a whole lot of fun. They're so funny. It's such a fun, intelligent conversation. Plus, it's also we make Eiffel Tower jokes, if you get my drift. So, it's also very tongue-in-cheek and very raucous. We get a little raunchy. It's fine. And I believe that's all. And for Baking Corner, I just made some good old chocolate chip cookies this week with some espresso powder that I tossed in. And I haven't had a lot of time recently for baking, and I've been a little kind of burnout. I'm kind of in a weird place of I don't know, I don't know what to cook anymore. I don't know what to bake anymore. I made beef stew this week. It's freezing and raining in LA this week, so it was a perfect beef stew weather. I say that, and I know so many of you are buried in snow right now. I am so sorry. I don't mean, but it's very cold for us, and there's a lot of rain. So it was beef stew weather for me. I apologize. I don't mean to to play the Pain Olympics with those of you who I know are buried in snow. Anyway, I'm going to go. I think that's all for this week. And anyway, I'm going to go. I'm going to enjoy my weekend at my cousin's baby shower. And I will see you next week for some Q&A. And I am trying to get finished with a guided nightmare as we speak. And speaking of the Q&A, if you have any ideas for places you'd like me to set the guided nightmares, please feel free to put them in that Q&A in the NGL link, because that is one thing I run into is I start and I'll get halfway through a guided nightmare and I'll be like, no, the people don't want to be here in this setting. This is stupid, and they're going to think it's stupid. And then I talk myself out of it. So, just if you have any ideas of where you'd like to visit during a guided nightmare, then I would appreciate it. So, yeah. All right. I will talk to you later. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, a beautiful weekend. Please drink your water, stretch, and yeah, go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.